And joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show is a man who won many rings in Denver, Colorado. Now does a terrific job with Fox Sports, calling games. He is none other than Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show, Mercedes-Benz Vance phone line. How you doing, Mark?
I am well. I'm me personally. I'm doing great,
Yep.
Rich. After watching that game, maybe the worst game in the history of the National Football League last night. Gosh, it was awful.
So why? What was last night all about when you saw that?
Yeah, well,
night?
you know, it's so funny because we try to make this game so complicated. Like it is. Like the thing that fascinates me about football, Rich, is the juxtaposition between simplicity and complexity. You know, there's a complexity part to this game that's really fascinating from a strategy standpoint. But the bottom line is this game is simple. If you dominate the line of scrimmage, you win. And nobody could dominate the line of scrimmage, at least on the offensive side of the football. Quarterbacks under duress, it just looked ugly. And then decision making. Like it is so hard, I think, as a head coach sometimes to be in complete and total control of play calling at the same time and manage a football game. And, you know, there's a point there on a third down where Russell Wilson throws an interception because he's targeting Tyreek Hill in the end zone. And, you know, I mean, Stephon Gilmore undercuts it and intercepts the ball. And the whole time I'm like screaming at the television going, just run the ball, kick a field goal. Like the odds of the Colts going 75 yards and scoring a touchdown, like they haven't moved it 40 yards. They can't move the football. They can't protect their quarterback. Like what are you trying to prove? This is about winning a football game, not style points. Like you don't get style points.
But I mean, if he was, and that's what's really confusing to me about the Broncos, Mark. Let's jump into this using that as a jumping off point. Is that if it was style points, then they would never have hired, you know, Jerry Rossberg to come in and sit up there and be what, the angel on the shoulder of their new head coach Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, he would have been concerned about how that looked. He says he's fine with that, but now Rossberg comes in and then what? I mean, you call a pass in the end zone on that part of the game where you just need to kick a field goal and get out of Dodge. But then again, you didn't expect Russell Wilson to throw the interception. Also, towards the end of that game, in the moment in overtime where the Colts call timeout and then the Broncos call timeout, only to come out and then throw a pass when you could run the football. It just seems to be a complete and total mess from the operation, the execution, and now the confidence level of a guy who was on the path to the Hall of Fame when he arrived in Denver. In 5 games in, we're wondering what happened to that guy.
Yeah,
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's perplexing. And the other thing is you get all the way down there and you've run the ball okay getting down to that position.
Right.
And now in a 4th down and 1 situation, this happened in Baltimore last week, 4th and short on the goal line, and you decide to go shotgun empty. Now, they had a back in the backfield in Denver. Baltimore went shotgun empty. But my thought process is you've already created, like the one thing a defense wants to do, they always tell you, like when you go into these production meetings, Rich, right, you talk to the defense coordinator.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, number one priority, stop the run, make them one-dimensional. You go out there on a 4th down and 1 and you're out in shotgun and you spread your offense, you make yourself one-dimensional. The defense says, oh, gosh, thanks. We appreciate that because now we don't have to play the run. Now we can eliminate that from our thought process. And so when you come into a situation, especially on the goal line, when you're a short yardage situation, Rich, and your center or your quarterback gets under center and you've got running backs in the backfield, and that's a potential. As a defender, you have to guess because you have to sit there and say, okay, what by formation and everything that we've seen so far on film, what are they going to do? And you have to say, hey, man, I got to sell out on this run. I've got to sell out. I've got to stop this. So if you do flag play action, the odds are, you know, as a defender, especially as a linebacker, you have to play low to high, meaning you got to play the run first. You got to step up there, and then you got to fall back and scramble and try to defend the pass. When you get into shotgun, you're like, the only thing they can do is quarterback draw. And I can play that from a deeper standpoint. So as a linebacker, instead of being 3 yards deep, all of a sudden I cheat a yard and a half or 2 yards. Now I'm covering more of the end zone, and I'm taking away the levels, because you always try to run one receiver underneath, right on the goal line, and one the back end line, right? Well, if I can play that at a yard and a half deeper, I've made that window for the quarterback to throw it over me into the back of the end zone. I've made it so much tougher. So I will never, ever understand why you would line up that way as an offensive play caller and eliminate something for a defense. I want everything. I want every option on the table as an offensive player. Why do you do that to yourself? I don't understand.
Well, the difference between what you just laid out from the Ravens last week and what we saw last night, there's a similarity and then there's a difference. The similarity is the play call in Baltimore worked. Lamar had 2 wide open receivers on that 4th and goal, and he didn't hit either one because there was a rush in his face, or he didn't throw it when he should have. And, and then it was the coach who got blamed. Last night, the play worked, and KJ Hamler was wide open right in front of Russ, and he didn't hit him. And Hamler, with his 37 career receptions, slams his helmet down, and I don't think I've ever seen a Seahawk receiver do that in frustration with Russell Wilson. So my question for you is, what is going on with Russ and this team already 5 games in to have this frustration be so easily flown in our faces?
Well, because, think about what they've been able to accomplish. They scored 16 points against Seattle, 16 points against Houston, 11 points against San Francisco in a victory, 23 points against the Raiders, and last night a whopping 9. There's reason. They thought they were coming in here, and they thought that this was going to be, this offensive juggernaut that we have created, and Russ and Hackett, and the way it's going to work, and it has been anything but. And and you're right about the play calling. The other difference is it was like 4th and 4 in Baltimore, right? And they went empty. It was 4th and 1 in Denver. But I will say this, from a play design standpoint. So number one, you get the man-to-man tell right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
And you run a pick route on Hamler's side, and so Hamler gets wide open. But you're running something in the West Coast offense they call halfback burst. Meaning the halfback who is on the right hand or the left-hand side of Russell goes through the B gap, and then he comes across the field. So Russell, all he has to do is hold the safety, right? You hold the safety, that's going to come wide open. That's why he's looking to the left initially, holding the safety. When he peeks back over to the right to throw it to Hamler, that halfback burst created interference, body presence. So he had to wait for the second window to open. So Hamler had to go like where he wanted to hit him, all of a sudden the running back getting over there. So from a play design standpoint, that play sucks from a play design standpoint because your own guy created interference. So you had to hold the ball for a second and throw it to the second window, which was the back of the end zone. And by the time you held the ball, people just start flowing that way because now you hold the ball and you have to look. And your eyes take everybody over there, including Cortland Sutton. That ball was not meant for Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, I know.
That ball was meant for KJ Hamler.
Yeah, it sure was.
And Cortland was like, let me go make a play. Like, the design of that play sucked. You created your own defenders. So, yeah, Rich, I wish I could sit here and tell you, hey, it's an easy fix. But, when things aren't going well, and you start guessing or second-guessing yourself and you start losing confidence, that was the most humbled Russell Wilson in his press conference I think I've ever seen.
He still said...
It wasn't defeated,
right,
but it was certainly, oh, gosh.
He still finished with Broncos country, let's ride, and it just rings hollow. There's just no other way to put it, because nobody is... needs to be rallied, right, at this point in time, other than the guys in the locker room, because the fans are they walked out of a tie game in overtime. Like, we don't need to see the rest of it. I've never in my 20 years seen that with the NFL, Mark, where fans are voting with their feet to beat the traffic in a game that's going to overtime. I've never seen anything like that. So when you ask, like, what is the fix? They are just 2-3. That's the good news, right? They're just 2-3. But it's another nationally televised game next week. And I ask you, and I know you're in Minnesota, and I'll hit you on that game in a second. What is the sense in Denver that you think? Is there a hot seat for a first-year head coach? Is there potentially one? Because they're not getting rid of the guy with the $245 million contract. That's for damn sure.
You're 100% right. And last week, Rich, now I was in New York last week hosting, doing some TV work for FS1. But, kept in touch with all my guys on the radio station there in Denver. And the big scuttlebutt is Peyton Manning, or excuse me, not Peyton Manning, is Sean Payton ready to come back? Would he come back to Denver? Would he leave TV? Because, the big speculation was he was waiting for the Dallas job to open. But would he come to Denver? Like, that's what people are speculating now. Like, that the hot seat, legitimately, after 5 games, they're like, Nathaniel Hackett isn't the right guy. What are we going to do? And I've never seen anything like it. I'm with you. When I saw people shuffling out of the state, were they announcing that they're going to get refunded tickets? If you leave now, you can get your ticket refunded? Like, what? I've never seen anything like this. Is Denver, Colorado. Like, people are rabid about the Broncos. I can't even fathom what happened. What I witnessed last night was something I've never witnessed before.
Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show. And as I said to open the show, anybody was losing that game when everyone was sitting through it and, sticking through it, whether they're a diehard fan of the sport or it's fantasy or gambling purposes or whatever. Whoever was losing that game was going to get savaged. Colts would have gotten savaged, too, if they had dropped that game because they looked terrible. What is with that offensive line? What happened to what we thought was going to be Ryan's career, end of his career, that he's finally playing behind a terrific offensive line? They've been terrible.
Awful. I mean,
what happened?
Awful. And Quentin Nelson's been, arguably the best guard in football the last several years.
Right.
He doesn't look the same. They lost Ryan Kelly in the game last night, but none of them have looked good. And they've done nothing well. They haven't been able to run the ball. Their combination blocks have been horrible. They haven't gotten movement. They can't pass protect. Simple games, Rich, like simple day one, like, hey, man, they're running tackle or tackle end. And it's like they've never seen it before. Walk-up linebacker walks up, and it's like they busted and can't pick it up. They like simple things that they're not doing. And then last night they had 3/5 of the offensive line shuffled positions. They had the rookie left tackle came in there. Then they moved their left tackle to right tackle, and they switched out their right tackle and moved him into right guard. And like that was going to fix the issues. Like you just created 3 more issues. You know what that's like, Rich? That's like leaving the United States on vacation and going to Europe and having to drive on the other side of the road. It's very uncomfortable, and you have to constantly think. There's no reaction. It's all thinking. And when you think, it makes you a step slow. And then you put in Denver and crowd noise and everything else. They couldn't block anything. Now, you may not crash, but you certainly are not going to feel comfortable. But if you're out on European vacation for a week, you'll never feel comfortable when you get behind the wheel, ever. And that was what that game was last night. But that's been consistent. That's been their whole, all season long. They've been awful up front.
It's been terrible. I know. But, hey, they're 2-2-1. This league, man. This league. They're 2-2-1.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, they have the same number of wins as the other teams that are in first place in the division. In Jacksonville, who they're playing next week. Jacksonville, however, has a game against Houston coming up. And then the Tennessee Titans have 2, and they're going to visit Carson Wentz. One would think that should go in the Titans' favor. A few minutes left here with Mark Schlereth from Minnesota. Vikings and Bears on Fox. The best team you've seen so far through 4 weeks of calling games is which one, Mark Schlereth?
Philadelphia.
Okay, you didn't stutter? Go for it. What did you see? What did you see?
Well, like some teams, Rich, are big and strong. Some teams are fast and athletic.
Uh-huh.
Philadelphia is big, strong, fast, and athletic. That's a problem. It's a real problem. When you game plan, as a coach, you game plan for a defense, right? you're always looking at, hey, who can hurt us as a defensive lineman? How are we going to mitigate that particular individual? You know, you line up against the San Francisco 49ers, Nick Bosa. Okay, how are we going to stop Nick Bosa? Like, that's a problem over there, right? So we got to figure that out. Like, you look at Philadelphia, they have those guys. Fletcher Cox, the problem. Javon Hargrave, that's an issue. He's a tough guy to defend. You know, Hassan Reddick, when he decides that he's not going to play linebacker but D-end, that's an issue. Brandon Graham's come back from Michigan, your alma mater. Dude is not a good football player. At 13 years, he's a great football player, still coming off the Achilles. So that's an issue. And then the other thing you look at is outside. Who can we attack corner-wise? Well, I would argue with you right now that the tandem, the two best corners in football as a tandem, are Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Like, those guys are legit. So there's no real weaknesses there with that defense. And offensively, they can – I mean, what kind of game do you want to get into when it comes to running the football? Do you want us to bludgeon you because we're big and strong and we can bludgeon you? Or do you want us to outmaneuver you and get to the edge because we're super fast and athletic as well? Like, that's a real problem. So they present those problems. The one question mark was their quarterback. Well, you know, talking to Nick Sirianni, their head coach, I said, well, Jalen Hurts, what's his ceiling? He goes, Mark, I don't know. I don't know what his ceiling is because every day he comes in and every day he gets better than the last day. The dude is like a CEO. He's like a complete businessman. You can't even get him to crack a smile in a meeting. That guy is so focused. Like, I just think they're really a really good football team.
Mark Schlereth, before I let you go, man, again, you're a three-time champ, know the Denver sports scene and the Broncos scene very well, know the front office, know up until, recently, I guess, ownership pretty well as well. Crystal ball it for me. I know that's a cliche. You don't have a crystal ball. But Denver has another game, standalone game, whole country watching, Monday Night Football next week at the Chargers. And then home dates, 2 home dates against the Jets and the Jaguars. One would think, quote-unquote, winnable games, but you've got the Jets, and then Jacksonville is going to be another game. That's in London, so another standalone game. My bad. So you got the Jets and then a London game and then a bye. Then you got the rest of the season. What do you think is going to happen? Give me your best guess as to what can happen for the Chargers this year. What do you think? The Broncos this year.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I knew what you're saying.
Yeah, my bad.
I think right now, listen, you got this, you mentioned it, Monday night. If things don't look markedly better Monday night, I don't know what's going to – I really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they have, the guy they wanted, Billy Turner at the right tackle, he has not even played this year. You got a backup right tackle. Now your Bowles, who's your left tackle, is out with a broken leg. So you're going to have a backup left tackle. You haven't blocked people. Melvin Gordon puts the ball on the ground more than grass. You don't trust him. You lost Javonte Williams. You haven't developed chemistry with any of your wide receivers other than Cortland Sutton. You don't have a tight end who is got a dual threat personality. So you've got a couple guys that can run block. You got a couple guys that are pass receivers. So they're automatic tells. Rich, I don't right now. I don't see an end in sight. I don't those are real issues that you don't figure out because you change the play caller or you have a couple new designs. Like, those are real issues that I just don't see them fixing. And let me just tell you, you think the Jets are a winnable game?
Oh, no.
They're playing better. And I tell you one thing, Jacksonville is one of those teams that I don't think a lot of people want to play. That's a physical football team. So, they're in trouble right now. If things don't dramatically get better, and I don't see how they will, they're in trouble.
Especially in London. I've called Jacksonville games in London. That's a home game for the Jaguars. It is. Yeah. It's in Wembley. I mean, the owner owns the stadium. I mean, it really does bode poorly. And I just said the Jets, one would think, is a winnable game. I think the Jets have a better offense than Denver's right now, period. They have better playmakers right now, making better plays. I never thought I would say that about Russell Wilson in an offense, but again, just 2 touchdowns through the first 3 home games for Broncos fans to see, just 2. And only one of them's in the air. One of them's on the ground. Right. And so I don't know. And we'll find out, I guess, if the Walton family's got an itchy, firing trigger. I don't know.
Hey, 90. They could have scored so far this season in the red zone 98 points. I think they've scored just over 30.
Wow.
That's where they are right now. And I'll tell you this: If you said, hey, man, I'll trade you all the Broncos receivers straight up for all the Jets receivers, I couldn't line up quick enough to make that trade.
Mark Schlereth, thanks for the time. Look forward to your call with the Vikings and Bears, and look for more of my phone calls. Always appreciate it when you're on the show, brother.
Anytime, Rich. Take
Thanks,
care,
bud.
buddy.
That's Mark Schlereth of Fox Sports right here on the Rich Eisen Show.